One of the things that I've done in gut check is to try and give people maybe a better understanding that much of what is going on in their head, including addiction, including depression, including anxiety, uh, is actually coming from the bacteria in their gut. And as most of us really do not want to believe that we are the highest advanced creature of all time, that, my gosh, we are pretty special. And we don't really like the concept that a single cell microscopic organism could possibly control our behavior, could possibly control our wants and our needs. And yet, throughout Gut Check, in fact, the first chapter is all about how a single cell protozoan toxoplasma can actually rewire our dopamine circuits in our brain so that we seek out excitement, we seek out danger, we live on the edge, we want our dopamine receptors to be stimulated, and it's all because of this single cell organism wants and does take control of our brain. And the exciting thing is, and the reason I see a number of addicts is that um, when we change their gut makeup, when we give them foods that their good guys in their gut like, these guys literally make compounds. They make GABA, for instance, that calms down dopamine receptors. It even manipulates dopamine. And the exciting thing is, there is hope that we've gotten our gut bugs so screwed up through the things I write about in all my books that, in a way, it's no wonder that our world is just filled with addictive behavior. You name it, it really kind of comes from the same source. uh, you know, whether it's bulimia, whether it's cutting, whether it's pornography, whether it's gambling. We're after that dopamine hit in one way or another. And now we know that this is being controlled, or lack thereof, by the mix up of the gut bacteria.
Yeah, obviously I want to drive everybody to get the book. I know it's coming out. The latest book is coming out in January, but I'd love if we could maybe stay here for just a short minute and maybe get somewhat tactical, right? Mentioned before we hit record the work that we're doing with Rebuilt Recovery, working specifically with men all across the world that are struggling with pornography addiction. We have an approach that we take centered around an elimination-based diet, a carnivorous type of approach. It's something that I experienced in my life, and without having any real scientific evidence to support, I'm like, this. There's something behind this, and I've had it validated multiple times with experts and doctors like yourself. So, for the guys that are out there, maybe listening this, that are maybe not a part of our program, they're maybe not into the coaching, but they're struggling with some of these addictive behaviors. Maybe it's with pornography, maybe it's with gambling, maybe it's with video games, maybe there's a woman out there that is struggling with maybe a shopping addiction. What are some steps that they can take with this toxoplasmosis that you were referencing there, like to actually begin to heal, reset, reboot, and get that healthy dopamine receptors firing in the way that we're now chasing the real dopamine and wanting to stay away from that artificial overstimulation?
So one of the things we've come to realize is, there's 100 trillion bacteria in our gut. To give you some idea of how massive a number that is, recently it's been discovered a count that there's 3 trillion trees in the world. So that means, yeah, 3 trillion. It's a lot of trees, but there's 97 trillion more bacteria in our gut than there are trees in the world. So, and believe it or not, these bacteria act as a tropical rainforest. They are the most, complex ecosystem that you could imagine. And like any tropical rainforest or ecosystem, there are all sorts of species that occupy niches, that fight for resources, that share resources. One bug does something. And what we're finding out is that most of us, uh, through no real fault of our own, have killed off this tropical rainforest that literally napalmed it, burned it to the ground. And it's no wonder that we no longer receive all of these signals, all of these hormones, all of these manipulating bug factors. We've killed them off with antibiotics that we've even either taken ourselves. Anybody gets a little sniffle, and some doc will give you an antibiotic, and it won't work because it's a virus, but you're going to take it anyway. We feed our animals antibiotics. 70% of all the antibiotics in the United States are fed to animals. Just 2 weeks ago, looking at fast food meals, every fast food meal had veterinary antibiotics in that fast food meal. Whether it was chicken, a burger, you name it, they were in there. So what? Well, those antibiotics kill off our microbiome. So every time, we go to the drive-through because we're in a hurry or, fast food, we're eating broad spectrum antibiotics that, I mean, it's like napalming or carpet bombing every day our gut microbiome. The other thing that is really important, we now spray Roundup on everything. Roundup is sprayed on all conventional crops, not just GMO crops. And Roundup, people don't realize the active ingredient glyphosate was patented by Monsanto as an antibiotic. It wasn't patented as a weed killer. And you go, wait a minute. They're not washing this glyphosate off of our foods that we're eating, that are fed to our animals. And glyphosate, every time we eat it, it actually kills off specifically the bacteria that make all the feel good hormones, for instance, like serotonin. And so it's no wonder that we're all anxious, we're all depressed, we're all, addicted to something to get a dopamine hit that never actually calms down because our bugs no longer make GABA, which tells dopamine, hey, just calm down a little bit, would you? So it's no wonder that we're all in this place. And we all want to point to social media and we all want to point to video games or whatever. But we really need to point to how we messed up this normal modulating factor. For instance, we know that women with bulimia or anorexia have a really crazy, weird microbiome. And if you correct that microbiome, their bulimia and anorexia go away. And, don't get me wrong, counseling is a great idea. But in most of these cases, it wasn't their overbearing mother or their absent father. It was probably the fast food that did it.
Yeah, well, there's so much talk and conversation in the counseling, therapeutic, coaching space about getting to the root of these addictions. And I think so many people hear that and they're like, dad beat me in the past, dad was absent, I got bullied, maybe I was sexually abused, which obviously does happen, right? So I'm not negating any of that. What I'm hearing you say is oftentimes for a vast majority of these addictions, it's the root is the gut.
Yeah. Just like Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. I mean, how this guy knew this 2,500 years ago, I've spent, my career now trying to figure it out. And I get closer to understanding it with every year. I mean, we didn't even know these guys, these 100 trillion organisms existed up until the start of the Human Microbiome Project in 2006, and it was just finished in 2017. I mean, it's like discovering that life can occur 5 miles deep in a black ocean, and you go, well, nothing can live down there, and then you send a deep diving machine down there and go, oh my gosh, there's all these creatures down there. How can they